Hi everyone, greetings from a very rainy Julius de Onyanga. When I was in the British Army, they used to say the army doesn't stop for the rain. I think that also applies um, to Christian soldiers. Christian soldiers who are in the Lord's army don't stop because of the weather. So I would have liked to do a walk and talk as I go through my top 20 books to read, which I promised I'll do yesterday, but I'll have to do this video in the car because of the rain. It's raining, and then like right now it stopped, but it can just start raining any minute. But I can see more rain coming because where we are, we're kind of like in an elevated position, and I can see. Normally we have rain that comes from the same direction, so I can see that there's more rain coming. So anyway, without wasting time, let me just start with a verse from the scriptures, which is 2 Timothy 2:15, and it says, "Study to shew thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth." So it's main bit I want from that verse is the very first bit, which says, "Study to shew thyself approved unto God." So, of course, I believe this is mainly referring to the study of the scriptures, um, but also I think on top of studying the scriptures, we should also study, especially history books. Um, uh, a lot of things seem to come in two streams. There's true history and then there's false history. And it has been said many times, history is written by the victors. So sometimes those who are victorious in wars, normally they give history a slant so that it can show things in their favor. Just like with the issue of the Bibles as well. There are many versions of the Bibles. There are actually two streams of Bibles, not hundreds, especially in the English language. But hopefully we can cover that at some point. I'll start with number 20, going down to number 1 of in this list of my favorite books that I've read. Number 20, we have Moon Man, which was written by a man called Bart Sibrel. And Moon Man is about basically an investigation which Bart Sibrel carried out when he was doing some documentaries about the moon, the so-called moon landings. And in the book, it says basically that the moon landings never happened. They were faked, and Bart found out through many informants who were working for NASA, or somehow had information about the so-called moon landings, which the first one was supposed to have happened in 1969. In the book, I'm just doing a synopsis of each book. It says that the footage that we've seen of Neil Armstrong and Buzz, walking on the surface of the moon, that was actually filmed in a hangar where they keep planes. There were actually two hangars on a military base in Texas that were joined together, and what we thought was the surface of the moon was actually crushed concrete. And Bart Sibrel got this information from someone who was actually there when all this was done. And it's also said that FDR, who was the president then, not FDR, sorry, LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, actually visited that site. And number 19, we have Blowing Up Russia, a book which was written by Alexander Litvinenko and his friend. And basically, in the book, Alexander Litvinenko says that the bombings that were happening in Chechnya were actually orchestrated by the Russian government, so that they blame the Chechen separatists, and then use that as a pretext for going into Chechnya. And of course, for those who remember, Alexander Litvinenko then escaped and ended up in Great Britain, but unfortunately he was poisoned there by someone he thought was his friend. Number 18, Escape from the Auto de Fe, a book by Fernando della Mina. This book was written a long time ago. Once again, it's Escape from the Auto de Fe. Auto de Fe is basically was the Inquisition, in which those who were accused of heresy eventually would be burnt, normally burnt on the stake. But Fernando de la Mina, who wrote the book, managed to escape, and he tells the story in that book. Number 17, we have Vicars of Christ by Peter de Rosa. I read this book a long time ago, but it's really opened my eyes to a lot of things about basically all the scandals that have happened in the Catholic Church, including scandals that involved the popes and how they had illegitimate children, and sometimes would have sexual relations with their own sisters. It's a very interesting read for those who want to know more about things that we don't normally hear about the Catholic Church nowadays are happening, especially in the Dark Ages. Number 16, we have Operation Gladio, written by Paul L. Williams, where he talks about so-called left behind units Gladio units that were left in remained in Europe after the Second World War, and these units conducted terror attacks which killed a lot of innocent people. But he also talks about the drug trade and how the Vatican, the CIA, and the mafia are involved in the drug trade, and just talks about I think going from memory, he talks about a lot of the drugs coming out from Afghanistan, because before 9/11 the Taliban were actually destroying the poppy plants from which we get heroin. It is said that part of the reason why 9/11 was orchestrated was to basically give the American military an excuse to go into Afghanistan and kick the Taliban out. Of course, which now they say that they failed to kick the Taliban out, and the Taliban are back in power. Number 15, The Prophet. It's in the form of a comic book and it's produced by Czech Publications, but it's actually basically the story is from Alberto Rivera, and the synopsis of the book is that Alberto Rivera, by the way, was an ex-Jesuit priest from the Catholic Church who left the Society of Jesus, which is the official name for the Jesuits. He left, and he in that book he says that basically Islam was actually started by the Catholic Church, and he learned this when he was going through Jesuit training. He learned this from a Jesuit cardinal called Cardinal Bay, and he learned that Islam was created by the Catholic Church to be a weapon that was going to be used against Christians. So the Muslims were supposed to fight the Christians and kill them, because Christianity was growing quite rapidly around the time that Islam was started. Number 14, I put down The History of Protestantism by J.A. Wylie, and this comes in 4 volumes. So the title of the books is self-explanatory. Very in-depth history of Protestantism for those who really want to understand what the issues were. Number 13, put down Truth Triumphant by B.G. Wilkinson. Basically, he did a lot of traveling as he was investigating the issue of the Sabbath, and then he proves in the book that the Sabbath was kept on many continents and in many countries, including in China and including in India. There were a group called the St. Thomas Christians and others who kept the Sabbath in India, and this was basically Sabbath keeping in these countries, including the British Isles, by the way, including Ireland, and even individuals like the person we know nowadays is Saint Patrick, who they claim was a Catholic, was not a Catholic. He was a Protestant. They were all Sabbath keepers, and so B.G. Wilkinson proves in that book that the Sabbath was kept almost all over the world until persecution was started to put out Sabbath keeping, and obviously the persecution was instigated by the Catholic Church. Number 12, The Secret History of the Jesuits by Edmond Parry, and he says in that book that World War I and World War II were instigated by the Society of Jesus, like I said before, commonly known as the Jesuits, and even the genocide that happened in Croatia also was what's done by a group called the Ustashi, which were a Catholic militia, but all this was done with the approval and the instigation actually of the Catholic Church with the full knowledge of the Pope at the time, who I believe was Pius XII. Number 11, The Enemy Unmasked by Pastor Bill Hughes, where he talks about secret societies, and he wrote this second book because his first book, which I'll talk about later, when he wrote the first book, he had certain individuals challenging him, stating that what he had said was not true. Number 10, A Trip into the Supernatural by Roger Morneau, who worked in the Navy in Canada. He was actually spoke mainly French, but managed to learn English, and the book is in English. He talks about how he was invited to join a satanic secret society, but he didn't stay there long because he then came across Seventh-day Adventist who helped him to convert to Christianity. But when he came out with a lot of secrets about what he had learned, and he was actually tormented by demons for leaving the secret society. And one of the things he says in an interview, not so much in the book, but in an interview, he says one of the last deceptions of the devil is going to be a fake UFO invasion, which is also spoken about by, there was a man called Werner von Braun, who was a Nazi scientist who left Germany and worked for NASA in the US after the Second World War. Now, Werner von Braun also told one of his assistants that one of the last deceptions of the devil is going to be a fake UFO invasion. So that's Roger Morneau basically in the book exposes some of Satan's deceptions and some things that are even coming, which haven't happened yet. Number 9, Behold the Pale Horse by Bill Cooper. Bill Cooper was an American who was also in the Navy, and one of the fascinating things that I read in the book is that he witnessed a massive UFO coming out of the ocean whilst he was working for the military. I believe he was on the top of a submarine when it was above water, and he was threatened not to talk about that. He also talks about various organizations that are bringing about a new world order and how they are trying to reduce the world's population through a tactic or technique called silent weapons for quiet wars. Basically in the book, it talks about how someone bought a just on the issue of depopulation. Someone bought a second-hand photocopying machine, and when they got it back to their house or to their office, when they opened the top where you put whatever you're trying to copy, they found a document in there, and the document was entitled "Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars." And basically, that's actually happening right now with the 5G, and I'll just show this on my arm because nowadays when you say certain things on YouTube, you can get cancelled. So, the plunger that many took during the COVID scamdemic, that's also a silent weapon as well, as well as other weapons.